Casting for The Lost was a very important part, but surprisingly easy. So let's meet our vampire gang. First up, our head vampire is played by Cheyenne, who grew up in Garden Grove, California, moving all around the Central Valley from Merced to Stockton. In 2013, when she settled down in Sacramento, that's when she discovered filmmaking, the perfect creative outlet for her. She once did a flip and landed on her face, but even that couldn't stop her. She was at a solstice party and she took on a guy about twice her size. One hit nearly bent him in half. I knew Cheyenne was the perfect girl to play the tough little vampire miracle. Cheyenne claims not to be over 400 years old, but I have my doubts. Savannah grew up in Pearland, Texas, in front of a camera due to her mom's fascination with photography. Her school once had to call her parents because she refused to take off a witch hat that she was wearing. After she turned 18, she moved around the Pacific Northwest, spent some time in Sacramento to nurture her creative side. She once telepathically commanded a raccoon to make her grilled cheese sandwiches. In addition to being co-creator of The Lost Girls and herding cats behind the camera, Savannah found a way to channel her inner bitch as the badass Dorothy. She now sells sculptures and other art that she makes as the DIY Witch. She can be found on TikTok and Instagram. Una was built out of stolen mannequin parts and bubblegum. She graduated from Cornell University in 2032 and built herself a time machine. She wanted to become an actress back in the 1980s, but the supervillain Dr. Zinger sabotaged Una's time raider, and she ended up in the 2000s making pizzas and terrorizing the local population. She has a painting of the god of music, David Bowie, painted in her own blood, and she fire dances for fun. I asked Savannah one time when we were working on one of our other scripts, I was like, how do I write Una crazy? And she said, Una is crazy. You should see some of the shit she posts. Corwin is a motorcycle riding, karaoke loving chaos magician, whom I refer to as my boyfriend. And he once advised me on which magical seal to use to keep ill-intended vampires away with a protection spell. It was his natural charm and charisma that got him the part of creepy Rico. And his martial arts training inspired us to define exactly why vampires just sort of know how to fight. Corwin seems quiet and shy at first, but once you get him talking, you can't shut him up. Girl plays Elise, who was raised by a traveling carnival at the turn of the century. Girl is also the master of the ugly selfie, of which there's two types. There's the overt one, where you're making such a hideous face that it's like a monster. And then there's the covert kind, which is almost subliminal, and it's more like the uncanny valley. Now, somehow, the only tall, blonde, pretty girl in the movie ended up as a background character, but we do have plans for more of her stories. Another character you barely see is Hell, who's named after an old girlfriend of my dad's. Nicole is the reincarnation of Isis, and sometimes struggles as she perceives the spirit world and the mundane world simultaneously. She once went to a movie night where there would be two other girls who had both dated two of her exes, who were also there. On the way there, she was told that it was an intervention, but that was a joke, and it was just an almost awkward movie night. We took our first impressions of Nicole and mixed them with some actual historical events in order to give Hell one of the most interesting backstories that we'll tell in a future project. Now for the victims. Sophia is actually a classically trained opera singer who I hired as a production designer on this film. But when I learned of her acting experience, she ended up in the running for the lead. And she also provided the haunting vocals for the ending theme song, so you can thank her for that too. Those are three very different jobs, and Sophia managed to excel at all of them and still look that good. So that might be the greatest mystery. Ted's background is mostly unknown and somewhat mysterious. He's well versed in many types of magic and knows his way around computers. And with those combined skills, he once helped me track down clues about a disappearing book of magic. Before any of that, though, his charisma and his good looks caught my attention. The way I wrote the character of Bobby was deliberately ambiguous as far as his intentions. And I never let Ted know what I was thinking for that. I just left it up to him, and he surprised me with his choices, which ultimately ended up shaping future stories with these characters. Now, I know you've been waiting for this. Our casting for the Lost Boys. Oren signed on to play David without even realizing he'd be paid to do it. The costume he's wearing is entirely made up of items out of my closet because that's just how I always dress. He doesn't wear the distinctive twisted paperclip earring that Kiefer Sutherland wore in The Lost Boys. But if you look closely, Miracle is wearing that in her right ear in our film. Now, how David gets it from Miracle and why he wears it, that's a story for another time. Now Oren gets paid to stab people with needles over and over again. Ryan had no idea what he was hired for, but his ability to multitask was essential for the character of Dwayne, David's right-hand man, who in our film always appears to his left, symbolizing how, to an outsider, vampires' lifestyles look backwards. Dwayne was another character that I thought was important to include, even if David did all the talking. Ryan was always working hard, well, at least until the sun came up. Dirty Kid once got a job managing a restaurant without having any experience. He deliberately makes bad first impressions to avoid people expecting much from him. We saw through that, so we found him aimlessly wandering through Sacramento, and we threw him in a van and drove him to the set. When he saw the costumes all laid out and the vest that I had made for his character to wear, he said, "Oh my god, this is the coolest vest ever!" And I was like, "That's your character's." And he's like, "I get to wear this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He ended up liking it so much that after production wrapped, he bought it from me. So if you're ever in Sacramento and you see that vest, you might have just had a Dirty Kid sighting. Ultimately, I wrote and directed The Lost because someone joked that I looked like Paul from The Lost Boys. After battling an evil witch who infiltrated my dreams to convince me that my friend was a mind-controlling blood mage, I knew I had to make this film. It was an easy choice because to me, it's always 1987. In The Lost, we introduced another vampire gang prowling the streets of 1987. The Lost is what the industry refers to as a proof of concept piece, what most people would think of as like an extended trailer for our next project, a feature film called, you guessed it, The Lost Girls.